My wife thought she sent a voice message to her best friend, but it came to me. It was late, close to midnight, when I heard my phone buzz on the nightstand. Emma was already asleep beside me, her breathing steady, calm, peaceful, the way someone sleeps when they believe their lives are safe. I turned over, half awake, and saw her name on the screen. The message was still downloading. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room, soft at first, like it always was when she talked to her friend, that same light, casual tone. But then the words came, and each one felt heavier than the last. I think he's finally going to sign them tomorrow. Alex says once that's done, we're free. He has no clue. It's almost funny. 12 years, and he still believes everything I say. After this week, I'll never have to pretend again. I sat up slowly. The message kept playing. There was laughter, a man's voice in the background, faint, but I knew it wasn't mine. She kept talking. I told him it was just a refinance, you know? But once Alex transfers the assets, it's over. I swear, he won't even know what happened until it's too late. The message ended with a sigh, and then silence. I just stared at the screen. Delivered. Read. That little gray checkmark glowed like a wound. I didn't move, didn't wake her, didn't delete it. I listened again and again until every word burned itself into my memory. Then I placed the phone back, exactly where it had been, and lay down beside her. She stirred once, rolled closer, her hand brushing against mine. I didn't pull away. I just watched her sleep. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye before leaving for work. Same perfume, same smile, same voice. She didn't mention the message. Maybe she hadn't noticed yet. By noon, I had forwarded the recording to my own private email and stored it on a hidden drive. Then I made a copy just in case. At lunch, I stopped by my bank, asked quiet questions, checked transaction histories I'd never bothered to read before. 2 accounts I didn't recognize, automatic transfers, each labeled legal fees. By the time I got home, she was in the kitchen, humming, pretending to cook. She asked how my day was. I said fine. That's all. That night, she scrolled through her phone before bed, smiling occasionally, typing fast. I watched her reflection in the mirror as she did it. At one point, she froze for a second, just one. Her face changed. The smile vanished. She'd seen it. The message. Her eyes flicked toward me. I didn't move, just brushed my teeth slowly, calmly, like nothing had changed. She said, "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." She stared for a moment longer, then forced a small laugh. "Okay, good night." The light went off. The silence between us felt alive. Somewhere in the dark, her phone buzzed again. She grabbed it, probably Alex. She whispered something, too low to hear. I closed my eyes and waited. By morning, she'd be terrified. She'd start to guess. But she wouldn't know what I was doing. Not yet, because while she was rehearsing lies, I was learning the truth. And the truth was a weapon she'd just handed me herself. The next morning, the air in the house felt heavy, like the silence had weight. Emma moved slower than usual, her eyes darting between me and her phone, as if waiting for something. I didn't say a word. I made coffee, fed the dog, sat down at the table, and watched her pretend everything was fine. She poured herself tea, but never drank it. Her hand shook slightly when she lifted the cup. The moment she reached for her phone, I knew she'd finally seen it. The message, the red receipt, the undeniable proof that it went to me. She froze in place, staring at the screen. The color drained from her face, so fast it was almost fascinating. "You okay?" I asked, calm, detached. Yeah, just work stuff." She tried to smile, but it cracked halfway through. Her voice trembled when she added, "Hey, I might stay late today. Big project." "Of course," I said, nodding. "Take your time." She studied me for a few seconds, maybe searching for anger or suspicion. She didn't find any. That was the point. I wanted her confused, off balance, guessing what I knew and what I didn't. When she left, I watched her car pull out of the driveway and disappear around the corner. Then I turned my phone on and played the message one more time. Each word now sounded different, sharper. I'd replayed it so many times that I could hear not just her voice, but what was behind it, that calm, cold satisfaction. By noon, I had a plan forming. I wasn't going to scream, accuse, or fight. I wasn't going to give her chaos. I'd give her silence, calculation, patience. I spent the rest of the day combing through our finances. There were new joint accounts I'd never authorized, small monthly withdrawals routed to a consulting firm I'd never heard of. A simple search told me that the firm didn't exist. Not really. It was a shell, an empty name tied to an address that belonged to Alex Carter. That was when everything clicked into place. The message, the documents, the sudden refinancing she'd pushed me to sign last week. I sat there for a long time, listening to the refrigerator hum, feeling the kind of anger that didn't burn. It froze. Around 6 p.m., she texted, "Running late. Don't wait up. Love you." I typed back, "Take your time. Be safe." I could almost feel her staring at her screen, trying to read between the lines. That night, I drove to the storage unit I'd rented years ago for old business files. Inside were boxes of papers, contracts, records, everything she thought I'd thrown away. I spent hours sorting, marking, scanning. I wanted evidence, not vengeance. Yet, when I came home, the house was dark. She was already in bed, pretending to sleep. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, then whispered so softly she couldn't hear it. "You made one mistake, Emma. You thought I was still the man you could fool. The next day would be different." She'd start covering her tracks, deleting messages, moving money. She'd think she was fixing it. And I'd let her, every desperate move, another rope around her neck. Because I need to catch her in a lie. She'd already confessed. All I had to do now was make the world hear it. By the third morning, Emma had switched from panic to performance. She started smiling again, overcompensating, talking too much about nothing. She laughed at breakfast, complimented my shirt, touched my hand while pouring coffee. Her eyes, though, kept darting the phone like a guilty metronome. Every time it vibrated, her smile stiffened. I played along, asked her about work, about her mother, about a dinner we never planned to have. My voice was steady. My hands never shook. The more normal I acted, the deeper her confusion grew. And confusion is a form of fear that spreads quietly, invisibly. When she left for work, I waited 5 minutes before following my own route, not to her office, but to someone else's. My old attorney, Richard Levin. I told him I needed to update some documents for long-term planning, a casual phrase that hid the truth. He greeted me warmly, the way you do when you've known a man for 20 years but don't realize his world just collapsed. "Planning ahead, huh? Retirement or inheritance?" "Both," I said, smiling faintly. "Mostly making sure the right people get what they deserve." He laughed, not catching the double meaning. While we reviewed the paperwork, I made small talk about taxes, property, and insurance. I asked if there was a way to set up legal safeguards in case someone tampered with my estate. He nodded. "Of course. We can establish a trust structure, limit access to authorized signatures." "Why? Someone try and pull something." "Not yet," I said, "but I like to be early." I left the office with a folder under my arm and something heavier in my chest. Calm resolve. The kind that builds when grief turns the focus. That afternoon, I visited the bank again. I didn't close accounts. I didn't freeze assets. I simply added restrictions, signatures, secondary verification layers. All perfectly legal, all invisible to anyone who wasn't looking closely. By the time Emma came home, I'd already encrypted the voice message and stored it on 3 different cloud servers under anonymous names. I also emailed a copy to Richard, scheduled to auto-forward to the authorities in 2 weeks unless I canceled it. Dinner was quiet. She was different. Her eyes moved slower, her words chosen more carefully. At one point she said, "You've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" I looked at her and smiled, genuinely. "Everything's fine. Why wouldn't it be?" She blinked, nodded, forced a small laugh. But there was something behind her eyes now, the smallest trace of fear, like a shadow flickering in candlelight. Later, when she went to shower, I check her phone. No password change yet. The latest message was from AC Alex Carter. AC, he's acting weird? Emma, a bit, but I think it's just guilt. He'll sign soon. She didn't delete the earlier message, the one she sent me. Maybe she couldn't bring herself to open that wound. Maybe she thought deleting it would make her look guiltier. Either way, it was still there. Proof. I put the phone back exactly where it was. That night, as she slept, I wrote something on a yellow sticky note and pressed it inside my journal. The first lie exposed itself. The second will reveal her. The next morning, I went in my office and began building what I needed most: a trail. Not revenge, not emotion, just undeniable evidence. She'd started a game she thought she could control, but she didn't understand the rules. I wasn't fighting to win. I was fighting to end it, permanently, quietly, and within the law she thought would protect her. By the end of that week, the air in the house had changed again. It wasn't silence anymore. It was tension disguised as politeness. Every word between us carried weight. Every look lasted half a second too long. I started to notice how Emma would rehearse her tone before speaking. Like each sentence needed to be tested before it left her mouth. She was scared, and she didn't know what I knew. That kind of fear is the slowest poison in the world. She'd wake up earlier now, spend longer in the bathroom, probably deleting messages, rewriting stories. I didn't stop her. Let her feel clever. Let her think she was hiding the truth. Because when a liar believes they're in control, they leave a trail even clearer than guilt. At breakfast, she sat across from me scrolling her phone under the table. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. Every time Alex's name flashed across her face in reflected light, I knew. The small upward twitch of her lips. That was his, not mine. So, she said too casually, I was thinking we should sign the refinance papers this week. It'll just make things easier. Sure, I said, not even looking up from the paper. Whatever's best. She blinked, caught off guard by how easily I agreed. Really? Of course. You handle it better than I do. She smiled, forced unsure. She wanted resistance, so she could feel like she'd won something. Instead, I gave her nothing to push against. The emptiness unsettled her more than anger ever could. When she left for work, I stayed seated, waiting for the faint sound of her car door, the click of her heels fading. Then I exhaled, slow and controlled, and opened my laptop. The attorney had sent me the updated drafts I'd requested. Each page looked legitimate. Transfer forms, joint property agreements, trust revisions. But buried deep in the legal jargon were clauses that turned everything on its head. If she signed those, she'd be handing control of every shared asset back to me, irrevocably, legally, permanently. I spent the afternoon building a different kind of case. Quiet, invisible. I installed a small camera in my office, disguised in the corner behind the bookshelf. Another one inside the pen holder on my desk. One more near the hallway mirror, where she liked to fix her hair before leaving the house. I didn't want scandal or exposure. I wanted proof. The kind of truth that couldn't be denied when the moment came. Around 6, she called. Her voice was soft, careful. Hey, you home yet? Yeah. I'm going to stop by the store. Need anything? No, thanks. There was a pause. Then she said, You're quiet lately. I'm just thinking. I said, About what? About us. Her breathing hitched for half a second before she forced out a small laugh. Don't get sentimental on me, Thomas. I won't, I said, and I meant it. When she came home that evening, her mood had shifted again. She kissed me, asked about my day, tried to sound light. I played along, smiled when appropriate, even made dinner. She poured wine. I didn't drink mine. We talked about trivial things, bills, movies, plans for the weekend. All normal, all fake, but underneath it, something else was happening. The invisible unraveling of her confidence. I watched her fingers tremble slightly when she reached for her glass. Her laughter was a second too loud. Her eyes kept flicking toward the desk drawer, where the refinance papers were. She wanted me to ask about them. To bring it up, I didn't. After dinner, she disappeared into the study. I followed a few minutes later, quietly. Through the crack of the door, I saw her pull out the papers, stare at them, and whisper to herself, "He doesn't know. He can't know." Then she signed them, my fake versions. Every page, every signature, perfect. I recorded the whole thing. When she went to bed, I stayed in the study, watching the footage on my laptop. The moment her pen touched paper, a slow smile crept across my face. Not from joy, not from satisfaction, but from confirmation. The woman sleeping down the hall had no idea she'd just signed away everything she thought she'd stolen. Tomorrow, Alex would call her. They'd celebrate quietly, thinking they'd finally won, and I'd be waiting for their victory toast. The moment they believed the game was over, that's when the real ending would begin. The next morning started quietly, almost deceptively so. Sunlight crept through the blinds in thin, sharp lines across the floor, and for a few seconds I almost forgot the war happening in silence between us. Emma moved through the kitchen humming softly, smiling like she hadn't in weeks. She was wearing that calm, collected look she always put on when she thought she'd regained control. She kissed my cheek before leaving. "Don't forget to sign the refinance papers today, okay?" "I won't," I said, returning her smile. "I'll take care of it." She paused for half a second, long enough to study my expression, maybe searching for hesitation or resentment, but I gave her none. I'd learned by then that silence was more powerful than any argument. When she left, I watched her car disappear down the street, and only then allowed myself to exhale. The papers she had signed 2 nights earlier were still on my desk. Every line of text looked ordinary, legal jargon that meant nothing to her. But within those pages were clauses that changed everything. Clauses she never read. Clauses that gave me full authority over every shared asset, property, and account. Clauses that made sure in the eyes of the law I was the only owner of anything that had ever mattered. I called my attorney, keeping my tone casual. "Just confirming you received the documents," I said. "I did," he replied. "Everything's properly executed. You're now the sole trustee. Do you want me to proceed with the filings?" "Yes," I said. "Today." And just like that, the trap was sealed. By noon, the changes were processed, notarized, and uploaded into the state database. It was all clean, legitimate, irrefutable. No accusations, no confrontations, just quiet paperwork shifting the balance of power completely. In the afternoon, I went about my day as if nothing had changed. I did errands, made small talk with neighbor, stopped for coffee. I was perfectly calm, because calm was the one thing Emma could never fake. That evening, she came home looking relaxed. She'd spent her day believing she'd finally close a chapter she'd been plotting for months. She set her purse down, kicked off her shoes, and smiled faintly. "You signed?" "I did," I said. "Everything's done." Her shoulders dropped with relief. She exhaled slowly and leaned against the counter. "Good. I'm glad we're finally finished with all that." "Me too," I said. She poured herself a glass of wine and offered me one. I declined. "Just tired." I told her. We talked about small things over dinner. Nothing important. But behind every harmless question, I could see her mind still running. She wanted to ask if I'd listened to that message again, if I'd understood what she'd said. She wanted reassurance that the damage could somehow be undone. But she couldn't ask without admitting the truth. When she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. I replayed her voice message one last time, not because I needed to hear it, but because I wanted to remember the exact tone she used, the certainty, the arrogance, the quiet cruelty hidden behind her laughter. I sent the recording to my private storage system, encrypted under a new name, Final Asset. Before turning off the lights, I wrote a note and left it in my desk drawer, folded neatly. It said, "Every lie needs a witness. Every truth needs a signature. You've already given me both." I went to bed with a stillness I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't angry anymore. The anger had burned out and left something sharper behind. Precision. Tomorrow she'd start noticing. A missing email, A strange notification from the bank, a bill she couldn't access, tiny fractures in the life she thought she'd secured. And when she came to me for answers, I'd be right there, calm, kind, and untouchable. Because now everything she wanted was already mine. The next few days were a slow unraveling, one thread at a time. I didn't need to move fast. I only needed to wait. Emma's calm began to crack on its own. It started with a phone call from the bank early Tuesday morning. She took it in the kitchen, whispering like she thought I couldn't hear. Her tone was polite at first, then uncertain, then sharper. "There must be some mistake," she said. "Those are joint accounts." I kept reading the paper, pretending not to listen, letting her struggle for composure. When she hung up, she walked into the living room and smiled like nothing had happened, but her hands betrayed her, clenched, restless, cold. "Everything okay?" I asked. She nodded too quickly. "Just some clerical issue. They'll fix it." "Good," I said. "I'm sure it's nothing." I went to my office, closed the door, and smiled for the first time in weeks. The filings had gone through exactly as planned. She was no longer authorized on a single account. She could try all she wanted, every password, every card, every transfer, and they'd all lead to the same message: access denied. By Wednesday, she stopped humming. By Thursday, she stopped smiling. She spent long hours pacing, texting, calling. I didn't ask who. I didn't care. The walls were closing in, and panic makes noise. I just watched, collected, and calm, like a surgeon observing a heartbeat fade on a monitor. At night, she still tried to play the role. She'd crawl into bed beside me, touch my arm, murmur good night, in that same tone she used before I found out who she really was. I'd whisper back, steady, even, but her breathing was uneven. Her dreams were restless. She woke up more than once and glanced at me, thinking I was asleep. Friday morning, she tried a different approach. "Thomas," she said at breakfast, "you haven't been yourself lately. You're quiet." I looked up from my coffee. I've had a lot on my mind. "About what?" "About trust," I said simply. Her fork froze midair. Just a flicker of fear crossed her eyes, gone as fast as it appeared. She forced a chuckle. "Well, we all get paranoid sometimes, right?" I didn't reply. The silence between us grew thick, almost alive. That afternoon, she left the house without saying where she was going. I didn't follow. I didn't have to. I already had the GPS tracker active on her car, an old business tool she'd never noticed. She drove downtown, parked near the financial district, and spent 2 hours there. Probably lawyers, maybe panic. When she came home that night, her expression was cold and tight. She didn't speak during dinner. I let the silence work for me. Silence is pressure. It makes the guilty confess without words. Around midnight, I heard her phone vibrate. She went into the hallway to answer it. Her voice was sharp, panicked. "I don't know how this happened," she whispered. "Everything's gone. My name's not even on the accounts." A pause. Then quieter. "No, he hasn't said anything. He's just watching me." She didn't notice me standing in the shadows by the doorway, her reflection trembling in the mirror. The next morning, I placed an envelope on the kitchen counter before she woke up. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a copy of her own signature from the documents she'd signed. At the bottom, a handwritten note in my pen. "You told me I'd never see it coming. You were right." When she came downstairs and saw it, her face turned pale. She looked around the kitchen, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "Thomas," she called out. I didn't answer. I was already gone, sitting in my car down the street, watching through the window as she realized the game she thought she started had been over for days. That was the first morning she didn't leave the house. The first morning she stopped pretending. And the morning I knew she finally understood what silence could do. By Monday, Emma's panic had turned into obsession. She barely slept, barely ate. Every time I walked into the room, she flinched, not from fear of me, but from the truth she'd finally started to see. She knew I'd done something. She just didn't know what, or how deep it went. She'd started spending hours at the dining table, surrounded by her laptop, old documents, and the phone she wouldn't let out her hand. I could hear her whispering into it sometimes, pleading with banks, lawyers, anyone who'd listen. But I'd already checked. There was nothing left for her to find. The accounts were secure, the transfers reversed, the paperwork flawless. She was legally invisible now. That morning, I found her sitting on the stairs, phone in her lap, staring at nothing. The air around her felt heavy, drained. When she looked up, her voice cracked. "Thomas, I think someone's done something to our accounts." "Our accounts?" I asked gently. She nodded quickly, desperate. "Yes, there's been some kind of mistake. I can't access anything. The lawyer said, I'm not authorized anymore." I poured myself coffee. "That's strange. Maybe check the papers you signed. The ones you were so eager about." Her eyes widened, her lips parting just slightly. "What do you mean?" I turned toward her, met her stare. "I mean, maybe you should have read them, Emma." For a few seconds, she didn't breathe. Then she stood up slowly, trembling, her voice breaking into a whisper. "You knew. You knew all along." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She backed away, like the silence itself frightened her. "What did you do, Thomas?" I sipped my coffee and said quietly, "I made things fair." That was all it took. The calm words hit harder than shouting ever could. She stormed past me, grabbed her keys, and slammed the door. The sound echoed through the house. I didn't follow. I knew where she was going. Back to the lawyer. Back to the illusion that she could still fix this. But she couldn't. The system she thought she could manipulate had rules. And this time, they were on my side. When she returned that evening, her eyes were red. She dropped her purse on the floor, didn't even try to hide the shaking in her hands. "You can't do this," she said. "You can't just take everything from me." I closed the laptop and looked at her. "Everything?" I said. "You mean the house you wanted to sell? The money you moved behind my back? The life you planned without me?" She didn't respond. I stood, stepped closer until I could see the pulse racing in her neck. "You were right about one thing, Emma. I never saw it coming. But neither did you." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She just stared at me, eyes wide, broken, as the realization hit that every move she'd made had been turned back on her, legally, perfectly, irreversibly. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "You'll regret this." I smiled slightly. "No, you will." That night, she packed a small suitcase. I didn't stop her. She left just before midnight, the tires of her car crunching against the wet pavement as she drove away. I stood by the window, watching her taillights vanish into the dark, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. But I knew it wasn't over. People like Emma don't accept defeat quietly. They circle back, desperate, reckless, unpredictable. And sure enough, 2 days later, I received an email from my attorney, a notice that she'd filed an official claim against me for fraud. Perfect, because the evidence I gathered, her signature, her voice message, her deleted files I'd recovered, was already packaged and time-stamped. I'd been waiting for her to make this exact mistake. She thought the law would protect her. She forgot who rewrote the rules. The official notice arrived on a Wednesday morning. A thick envelope, stamped and sealed, with her name printed neatly across the top. Emma Hargrove versus Thomas Hargrove. Fraud, coercion, emotional abuse, all the things she wished were true. She was trying to turn the system into her last weapon. I smiled when I saw it. It was exactly what I'd been waiting for. I didn't call my lawyer right away. I wanted to read it slowly, word for word. It was beautifully written, lies often are, in her statement. She claimed I'd tricked her into signing documents she didn't understand, that I'd taken advantage of her trust, that I'd been mentally unstable for months. There was even a line about how she feared for her safety. I sat at the table and read it 3 times. Not in anger, in admiration. She was smart. Even now, cornered and stripped of control, she was still trying to twist the story. But she forgot something crucial. I wasn't reacting. I was planning. By noon, I called my lawyer, Richard. He'd been expecting this. "Don't worry," he said. "We'll handle it." I've seen her filings. It's all noise. You have everything we need. Let's make sure she knows it, I said. That night, I invited her to meet in person, to talk things through. I wrote. She replied within minutes. Fine. Tomorrow, noon. She arrived exactly on time, wearing that same polished look she always used when she wanted to appear composed. Her confidence was an act, but a convincing one. She sat across from me at the dining table, chin high, eyes cold. So, she said, this is how you want to play it? Drag us through court, make me look like a liar? I didn't answer. I opened my laptop instead and pressed a key. The room filled with her own voice. That message, the one she'd sent by mistake weeks ago, her laughter, her words about signing the papers, about being free, about how I'd never see it coming. Every word echoed through the kitchen. Her face went pale. She tried to stand, but I raised a hand. You should listen to all of it. It's your voice, after all. She sank back into her chair, trembling. When the message ended, I let the silence sit for a moment before speaking. I didn't drag you anywhere, I said quietly. You did that to yourself. You can't. I can, I interrupted, and I did. You wanted my signature? You got it. You wanted my trust? You used it. You wanted control? You signed it away. Her breathing quickened. You think anyone will believe you over me? I leaned forward. No, Emma. I don't need them to believe me. I just need them to believe you. Her eyes darted toward the camera I'd set up in the corner, disguised behind a vase. She noticed it a second too late. Every word of this conversation, I said calmly, is being recorded, and so was the day you signed those documents. Every lie you've told is preserved, legally, clearly, permanently. She stood abruptly, her voice shaking now. You're insane. Maybe, I said softly, but I'm thorough. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The sound of the clock filled the space between us. Then she grabbed her bag and stormed toward the door. Before she left, I said one more thing. You should check your email tonight. You'll find something interesting. That evening, as the rain started tapping against the windows, I sent the file package to my lawyer and blind copied it to hers. All of it, the recording, her voice message, the documents, the camera footage. An hour later, my phone buzzed. One new message. It was from her. Just 3 words. How could you? I stared at it for a long time before replying. You taught me how. She didn't respond. Outside, the storm grew louder, rolling across the neighborhood like distant thunder. I closed the laptop, sat back, and let the sound wash over me. For the first time, I didn't feel tension. I didn't feel anger. Just quiet. Tomorrow, she'd wake up to a lawyer who wouldn't take her case anymore, to frozen assets, retracted claims, and the realization that her fight was over before it began. And when she finally understood, when it sank and that there was no one left to blame but herself, that's when justice would feel real. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. The following morning, the storm had cleared, but the air still felt charged, like the world hadn't decided if it wanted peace or another strike of lightning. I woke early, made coffee, and checked my email. The first thing I saw was a message from Richard, subject line, "She's done." I opened it slowly, savoring the moment. Inside was everything. Her lawyer had officially withdrawn from representation. The email was polite, almost apologetic. After reviewing recent evidence provided by the defendant, we are no longer in a position to proceed with this case. Richard had attached a note beneath it. Her claims are void. The recording sealed it. She'll face consequences for filing false statements. You've won, Thomas. I read that line twice, but the word won didn't sit right. There was no victory in it. Only quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes when you finally stop bleeding. By 9 a.m., Emma had called me 6 times. I didn't answer any of them. The 7th time, I let it ring out, then played the voicemail. Her voice was unrecognizable. The confidence gone. The arrogance stripped away. Thomas, please. We need to talk. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You can't do this. You can't ruin me. I didn't save the message. I didn't delete it either. I just let it sit there, another artifact of her undoing. Around noon, she showed up at the house. No call, no warning. The knock was sharp, desperate. I opened the door slowly, and for a moment we just stared at each other. She looked smaller somehow, her makeup smudged, her hair pulled back in a rush. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. She walked into the kitchen, the same place she'd once laughed, planned, betrayed. She stood by the table, her hands gripping the back of a chair. "You sent everything to my lawyer," she said. "Yes." "You ruined me." I took a sip of coffee. "No, Emma, you ruined yourself." Her eyes filled, but not with tears, with anger. "You think this makes you better than me? You think this—" She waved her hand at the house, at me, at everything. "This makes you the victim?" "I don't think," I said quietly. "I know." For a moment, she just stood there, breathing hard. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive. She tossed it onto the table. "What's that?" I asked. "Proof that you're not perfect either," she said bitterly. "You think you're clean? You think no one will find out what you did to me?" I looked at it for a long time, then smiled faintly. "That's empty, Emma. I checked last night when you left your bag in the car." Her face froze, then drained of color. "You what?" "Paranoia makes people sloppy," I said. "You were so busy trying to destroy me that you forgot who was watching whom." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. She took a step back, eyes darting toward the door. "I'm leaving," she said. "I know," I replied. "You should pack light. You'll be getting visitors soon." "What are you talking about?" "Richard filed your false claim notice with the court. There'll be questions about forged documents, hidden accounts. They'll want to know who helped you." Her mouth opened, but no sound came. The color in her face vanished completely. "You did this to yourself," I said softly. "Every document, every signature, every word, yours." She turned and left without another word. The sound of the door closing was quieter than I expected. That evening, I stood outside, watching the sunset fade behind the trees. The house was still, the kind of stillness that comes after years of noise. Inside, on the counter, sat the last piece of evidence, her original message, printed and sealed in an envelope marked Case Archive. I didn't keep it for revenge. I kept it as a reminder of how easily trust can become a weapon in the wrong hands. The phone rang once more that night, a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. Some silences are worth keeping. When I finally went to bed, I looked at the empty side of the mattress and thought about how much space one person can take up even after they're gone. Tomorrow, she'd face the system she tried to use against me. Tomorrow, her lies would meet paper, and paper doesn't lie back. And when that happened, I wouldn't need to say a word. Justice doesn't always arrive with handcuffs. Sometimes, it shows up as a letter in the mail, with your own signature at the bottom. I didn't want lawyers or headlines. I wanted her to feel what I had felt, the moment when the ground beneath you disappears, and you realize there's no way back. The charity gala was her favorite kind of stage, cameras, donors, all eyes on her. She'd spent the week pretending everything was normal, building that perfect public mask again. I let her. I wanted her confident. I wanted her sure the worst had passed. When I arrived, she was already at the podium, talking about trust and new beginnings. I stood in the crowd, calm, hands in my pockets. When she finished, applause filled the room, until I walked forward. "Before we celebrate," I said, my voice cutting clean through the noise, "there's something everyone here should hear." I pulled a small remote from my pocket and pressed play. Her voice echoed through the speakers, that same voice message, the one she sent me by mistake. Laughter, then the words that started everything. "He'll sign anything. He's too blind to see what's coming." The room froze. Her smile shattered instantly. She took a step back, shaking her head. "Thomas, what are you doing?" "Finishing what you started," I said. The screen behind her lit up with copies of her emails and documents. The bank transfers, the hidden accounts, her signatures. Everything perfectly timed, verified, public. The whispers turned to gasps, then silence. She tried to speak, but every word died before it reached the microphone. Her hands trembled as she looked around the room, realizing no one would meet her eyes. "This is slander," she shouted finally. "No," I said quietly. "This is the truth, the one you built yourself." Then I handed the foundation director a folder, her donation papers. She thought they were for her own project. In reality, they legally transferred every cent she still controlled to a community trust. Her name would remain on the documents forever, but as a caution, not a credit. For a few long seconds, no one moved. Then the audience began to part, leaving her standing alone under the lights she'd once owned. I stepped closer, just enough for her to hear me. "You wanted my name. Now you'll live under it." And I walked out. Outside, the air felt light, quiet, final. For the first time since that night, I didn't feel anger, only peace. She had taken my trust. I took her mask. And in the end, that was worth more than anything she ever tried to steal.